We still need data, but the type of data that we collect for our models is different. We're not trying to train the neural machine translation model. What we're doing is letting Google, Microsoft, DeepL, Systran, all of the good engines out there improve on their own like they do, and we just benefit from that. They get more fluent every day, and our ability to spin up a customer, get them up and running in 24 hours with the best fluency possible, still promising to translate their problematic terms exactly how they want them translated every time, because we're not training the model to properly translate these terms. We're telling the model in the moment, you know what? This source content contains these two problematic terms. This is how we want you to translate those terms.
If something is working well, then use it. And then build something better on top to make it even better. And that's the message today from our guest, Heather Shoemaker, the CEO and co-founder of Language.io. Tune in to learn how her passion for language led her to learn how to code and eventually co-found Language.io. Enjoy this episode.
IT Visionaries is brought to you by Salesforce Platform. If you love the thought leadership on this podcast, Salesforce has even more meaty IT thoughts to chew on. Take your company to the next level with in-depth research and trends right in your inbox. Subscribe to a newsletter tailored to your role at salesforce.com/newsletter.
Welcome everyone to another episode of IT Visionaries, and today we have the CEO and co-founder of Language.io. Her name is Heather Shoemaker. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Albert.
Listen, before we dive into Language.io, we do want to give our audience a chance to know you outside of the world of work. And to do that, we are going to start with the lightning round. The lightning round is brought to us by Salesforce Platform, the #1 cloud platform for digital transformation of every experience. Heather, this is where we ask you questions outside of the world of work, as mentioned before, so our audience can get to know you a little better. Are you ready?
I think so.
All right. We did some fun homework about you and learned that you walked away from the Air Force at the last minute because there were no women pilots at the time.
That is true.
What did you choose to do next?
Well, my option was to join the Air Force. They were ready to sign me on. I found out that I couldn't be a fighter pilot. At the time, Top Gun was a really popular movie, and that's probably my inspiration. And when they said no, I thought that was ridiculous. So I accepted a running scholarship to a small liberal arts college in Oregon.
What could have been? What do you like to do for fun outside of work?
Oh, is there an outside of work?
No, because you're a founder. So for you, no.
Right. Okay. Back in the day, I used to do things like rock climb and ski and do a lot of reading. I am still an avid crocheter, I will say.
Crochet?
Yes. I love to crochet.
What is the fanciest thing you think you've crocheted?
The fanciest thing... I'm not saying I'm a good crocheter, so this is not going to sound impressive because the fanciest thing I've ever crocheted was a relatively complicated shawl that had a cool pattern. But yeah, I'm not an impressive crocheter. I just enjoy it.
Hey, listen, I'm with you. I have a lot of hobbies. I'm actually not good at any of them either. So I think
okay, yeah, hey, whatever makes us happy, right?
Exactly. One of the things that we always want to know about our leaders is, we're going to dive into the company in just a moment. Your company's all around language. When did you first study a foreign language?
I did not grow up in a multilingual household like a lot of people who become linguists. It was when I was a teenager in high school and I started taking French and realized that speaking another language is kind of cool. I felt like it was a superpower of sorts, right? And I thought, wow, I could expand on this superpower and learn a few languages. And so I got pretty good at French. By the way, I'm horrible at French now. And then I went on to learn Spanish and Portuguese, and I still do speak Spanish, Portuguese not so well. But yeah, it was just this cool thing to be able to communicate with people who didn't speak my language. And I just got such a serotonin rush from being able to engage with people that normally I would never be able to have a conversation with. It seems simple, but it's not. It's a pretty big deal.
Growing up, I was a child of immigrants, so my first language was Chinese. I was actually taken aback when I was in elementary school and I found out people didn't speak other languages. I was like, oh, I'm different. It was surprising to me.
Yeah, it's crazy that more people don't, in my opinion, especially in the United States.
Yeah, and then you meet Then you meet kids from Europe and they're like, they all speak multiple languages.
Oh, I know.
It's pretty bonkers.
It's pretty standard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Heather, I want to say thank you for joining us today on IT Visionaries. You know, you kind of gave us hints and clues of your life outside of work. The fact that you were wanting to be a fighter pilot, the fact that you love the outdoors, the fact that you are a runner, so we know you love adventure. You mentioned the serotonin rush of getting and speaking a foreign language. Tell us about Language IO. What does it do, and how did you come up with the idea to start this company?
So I will make this as succinct as I can, but like I already told you about learning languages, that was a cool superpower. I wanted to expand on that. A lot of people who were graduating from the linguistics program at the University of Washington, where I got my undergraduate, were going into interpretation, right? They would just go straight into a role as a live interpreter. And I did that for a while, and I found that being paid to help somebody else speak another language, one person at a time, wasn't that rewarding. So I actually was an interpreter, a Spanish English interpreter for the Immigration and Naturalization Services for a while. And that there was some reward in that, helping people like political asylum seekers from Central America. That was rewarding. But then I would do other more mundane interpretation work that wasn't. And I thought, this isn't a long-term career path for me. What else is out there? And I always liked math. I know that's weird, but I did. And I remember listening to an NPR show. This was a while ago. And they were talking about how the next big thing is software development. And if you want a good career, go learn Java, the programming language. And I thought, oh, okay, that maybe is it's another language, right? Like, I wonder how similar a programming language is to a spoken written language that helps us communicate. And so I started doing a little research, got into a graduate program at CU Boulder in Colorado, and found out that I loved writing like code as much as I liked speaking other languages. It's another superpower. And so that's kind of how I got into coding. And my first job out of grad school, I was able to combine my love for languages, spoken, written languages, with coding in the field of software internationalization, which is this practice by which you take source code that was designed to support a single language and you make it capable of supporting many languages so that the software UI and under the covers is Unicode enabled. It will display these labels in multiple languages. And I got pretty good at it. And when I was initially with a startup, and I was sent all over the world helping these big companies internationalize their source code. So I would help them refactor their code base. It was fun because I got to travel, and it combined, languages with coding. And what I discovered during about a decade as an internationalization, globalization engineer was that while helping a company globalize their software was pretty straightforward. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't hard, but it's not rocket science. It's totally doable. The aspect of globalization, the challenge that companies faced for which there was no solution, was in the realm of multilingual customer support. So let's say you've taken your software, it can support any language. Now you actually have to provide customer support services to these people in China, in Russia, in Europe. And if you don't have support agents who speak the language, you were kind of in a pickle. And so there was no technology that solved that problem at the time. And I started thinking about it. How could I help solve this problem? And I eventually wound up as the head of product for an LMS, learning management system in Denver called eCollege. We successfully sold eCollege to Pearson. I had shares. And that kind of set me up into a position to do my own thing. And I was able to start actually building a solution for this multilingual customer support problem. And that was the birth of Language IO.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. So I have familiarization with what you were working on, which was localizing products. Like you said, the biggest challenge we had was possibly, in certain languages like German, the character length is so much longer that we had to refactor like some of the UI because the buttons didn't translate well.
You've done this
yeah,
too.
I've been a part of it, yeah, but only on the software side, kind of like what you said, which was it was
Yeah.
not a big challenge. We could take our screenshots, and how we did it was we would take our screenshots of our of the interface, and we could go take it to a translation service and say, hey, listen, tell me what these words mean in these
Right.
different languages, and there might be some minor UI adjustments so that we could fit the buttons and the screens and stuff like that. But what you're talking about is significantly more complicated, where we didn't have an answer. This is 2016 even.
Yeah.
The software company I was a part of, we had users in seats in just about every country because we were a social media management platform. We basically did not have North Korea and we didn't have Cuba. Every other country we had someone was sitting in that
That's
country
crazy.
using that product. When they did what you just said and submitted support tickets, we had no way of addressing it. In fact, we actually figured out a way to have like, hey, you guys, as in the customers, like Viacom was one of the customers. It's like, you guys need a center of excellence. So like there would be like a European center of excellence with it. We would train the European center of excellence how to use the platform, and then they would then be in charge of the support tickets. It was crazy, right?
Yeah.
And it was frustrating for our users because like you just described, which would be, hey, if I'm wherever country I'm in and I'm using this application, I submit my support ticket. Now I have to wait for the COE to address it. They might not know the answer. They're going to talk to the vendor. The vendor tells them back the answer. Then they can. It was a daisy chain of service tickets.
It's not scalable, right? You can't do that
was a
for
problem.
every language. Exactly.
So one of the things I think about the problems that we had, which you possibly are on the path to solving, was, how did you first think, like, how were you going to engineer a solution for this? Because obviously this show's created in English. We can assume most of our listeners speak English, but anyone who's ever tried to learn a foreign language, there's connotation, there's verbs, there's conjugation, there's different
tone,
all these different things. And then the way people type is not consistent.
No.
How did you go about solving, how did you start thinking about how to solve this problem? Because there's a lot of companies that are attacking this.
Yeah.
And it's curious to hear like your approach.
Sure. So, I mean, the biggest challenge with multilingual customer support is that the content that we're translating is conversational content. It's messy, it's full of slang and abbreviations and misspellings. People aren't careful with how they chat or email. And just to be crystal clear here, we weren't starting with voice, we were starting with e-support. So your standard e-support channels would be chat, tickets, so on and so forth. And while there were good machine translation, automated translation solutions for structured, well-written content, these machine translation engines don't do very well with this messy user-generated content just in general. But then add the complexity of a company's product names or industry jargon, these terms that could be translated in different ways depending on the industry. So let me just give you one really tangible example. We have we have a number of customers in a variety of different market verticals, but let's take the example of an online gambling company and a video streaming company. I can't name names necessarily, but you get the idea. There's lots of online gamblers who are going to place bets on players in certain sports. So let's use the example of somebody who's trying to place a bet on a player. And this person is in Spain, so they're speaking Spanish, and they're going to need to converse with the support agent about a player. Now, the way we translate the word player into Spanish varies depending on whether we're talking about a basketball player or a video streaming player. It is a completely different word. Now, if you just run it through Google Translate is an awesome engine, by the way. I'm not, no shade on Google Translate. It's one of the platforms we integrate with, but it doesn't have the context. If somebody says, I'm trying to place a bet on a player, well, bet, okay, I painted myself into a corner there. Let's just say they're using the word player, but Google doesn't know whether it's an online video streaming context or a gambling context. It's going to use jugador because more often than not, you're talking about a sports player, right? So jugador is great for a video or for a basketball player, but if it's a video streaming, you want tocador, completely different word. Google, Microsoft, all of the translation engines, general engines have no idea which one to use. So they use the most frequently requested based on context, right? So this is where Language.io comes into play. We decided to not build our own machine translation engine. There were lots of good ones out there that were going to provide a general fluent translation. So we have this aggregation layer where we're going to use our machine learning to intelligently select the best engine from a fluency perspective. Today, in this moment, what's the best engine for English to Spanish, Spanish to English? And so we have lots of data. I won't go into the supervised, unsupervised learning that we feed back into our system, but we can pick the best, the most fluent engine for that language pair. That does not solve the player problem or the messed up content, messy UGC translation problem. That's where we have a layer on top of it that's going to normalize the source content first, so it's easy to translate, easier anyway. And then whenever we onboard a customer, if they have a glossary of problematic terms, we can load that into our platform and impose that company's preferred translations on top of the engine we select. So if a company has lots of product names that they never want translated, or maybe it's a gaming company, we work with lots of gaming companies, and that's the most fun because they make up words that literally have no translation. Yeah. And they have to white label those words for each language that they support. So they have to invent translations. We load those preferred translations into our platform, and we have unique ways of telling the engine that we select, this is how I want you to translate this Magic the Gathering card, Eldrazi Devastator, into Chinese. You know what I mean? And so we do this real time, and we also we have adaptive learning. So we will improve translations over time with NLP techniques that we've developed that will detect problematic terms. And if they reach a certain threshold of usage, we push them in front of human linguists that work in our system, and those linguists will automatically push the preferred translation back into our system. So that's kind of a lot of information.
You know, when you described that use case, though, it became quite obvious to me because, the team at Mission busts my chops a little because I do enjoy some online gambling. Oh. I tend to wager only like $1 a game, so it's nothing like serious. And I'm controlled like in that regard. And like the most I'll bet is like a spicy chicken sandwich, which is $5. But what you just described is, I can see that because this is a time sensitive problem. If I make the wrong move, there's a window of time where I can retract my wager or whatever the case may be. Or if I think something's happened, and of course it's very time sensitive. Of course, like once the game has begun, like you can't ask for something back. So I could see the frustration from players and users around the world coming in and saying, hey, I need support now. Like I can't do what I did in 2016. When you were developing the system, you had mentioned before that you had experience localizing software. Is that where you discovered the gap, I guess, where you said, hey, certain engines are better than others? Is that the first time you saw it, or did you discover this gap a little later down the road?
It was later. As the internationalization, globalization engineer, I just recognized that there was a problem that needed to be solved. Like, companies didn't know what to do with customer support. They were having to staff up support agents all over the world, and it wasn't a scalable solution to the problem. So I started thinking about, well, what if we could enable a company to use their monolingual English-speaking customer support team, usually English-speaking, sometimes another language, but to provide support and e-support in any language. So suddenly, these knowledgeable but monolingual support agents could chat and email in Chinese and Russian and Spanish, you name it, right? That would be pretty cool. So once I got to a position where I could start writing the code to solve the problem, I did go down the path initially of doing what everybody else in the industry does, which is to train one instance of one neural machine translation platform. So let's say you're going to select Microsoft, right? Microsoft allows you to train up neural models. The problem with that is it requires massive quantities of human translated content with which to train for each language pair. And it's super time consuming, it's expensive. A lot of the folks who have this problem don't have massive quantities of human translated content to even train with. So, my small team and I put our heads together and we're like, well, what could we do? There's my cat. What could we do to make this a more scalable solution to the problem? And we thought, well, what if we just used the existing general engines that are the best engines, pick the best one for the language pair from a fluency perspective, and then do something on top of it pre-processing, post-processing, so we could spin somebody up quickly and still solve the problem and still get an accurate translation out there. And that's kind of how we came up with our solution. It was while we were building it.
How quickly did customers and other people see the effectiveness and results? Because it feels like it would be pretty quick because you're working from, like we talk about with different AI and ML engineers, they talk about how until you have a data model that has enough data to support what your hypothesis is, it doesn't really work, right? So like they talk about like identifying objects and pictures. Until you've taught the model what the object is, it doesn't really know how to find anything. And I would assume that the methodology you had taken would lead to results quickly. Or how did that fare in testing when you first started saying like, this is my hypothesis, I'm building a solution for it? How quickly were you able to say like, okay, this seems like a good option? And then how quickly did a customer say like, oh, I agree with you, Heather, this is a good option for me?
Yeah, really quickly, because we circumvented that data problem. Now, don't get me wrong, we still need data, but the type of data that we collect for our models is different. We're not trying to train the neural machine translation model. What we're doing is letting Google, Microsoft, DeepL, Systran, all of the good engines out there improve on their own like they do, and we just benefit from that. They get more fluent every day. And our ability to spin up a customer, get them up and running in 24 hours with the best fluency possible, still promising to translate their problematic terms exactly how they want them translated every time, because we're not training the model to properly translate these terms. We're telling the model in the moment, you know what? This source content contains these two problematic terms. This is how we want you to translate those terms. So that's something that we can just force on the engine. But then in the background, we're constantly running our own NLP mechanisms to detect new terms that we think our customers will need a special translation for. So we do adaptively improve over time, and we do have our own machine learning models to improve translation quality, but it's outside of the standard NMT training process. So yeah, to answer your question very quickly, I could name like one of the largest social media platforms in the world uses Language IO and has for years. And once they realized that we could give them fluent translations and force the engines to use their product names and properly translate their product names, they were thrilled, and they've stuck with us, as have many.
No, this is pretty amazing, because I'm thinking about all the use applications where like you mentioned before, like if I'm a service agent and I only speak one language, but I'm still really good at service, you still want to use me on a global scale.
Exactly.
Every inbound ticket is, in something I can read. And then every outbound ticket I'm sending through in one language is instantly translated to the receiving person. Is that how it's working today already? Where people are, where if let's say I'm an employer and I'm a global employer and I got service agents all over the world, where it's like, I don't actually need a Spanish speaking quota. I don't need a French speaking quota. I just need the best. And then I'll let the tool help me help the best deliver service to everybody.
Absolutely. So it enables them to just say, you know what, I already have this trained group of customer support agents. Yeah, they only speak English, but that's fine, because Language IO sits right in the CRM where they're already working and automatically translates their email responses, chat responses, chat bot responses into the customer's language and back.
So then I'm assuming this application there's an integration piece to yours as well, meaning like you had to build connectors into all the different service tools, because every company is going to have a different service tool. Like there's, unfortunately, that's the reality of it. Is that something that you guys, is that how it works? It's like, it's a plugin or some type of integrated service so that it lives in my service agent software?
You got it. So now obviously we cannot provide an amazing integration with every client relationship management platform that exists. It's a highly fragmented industry, but we do lots of market research, and we know what the CRMs are, which CRMs have the largest market share. We've targeted those CRMs like Salesforce, Zendesk, Oracle Service Cloud, et cetera. And we have really slick integrations for all e-support channels. So, if somebody uses Salesforce as their customer support solution and they want their support agents to be able to chat and email, they want to spin up chat bots and provide knowledge-based content in every language, we have really slick integrations for all of those channels for Salesforce, for Zendesk, for Oracle Service Cloud. There are some CRMs for which we don't have an integration. And, a lot of big companies build their own, and we can't do a lot about that. But we do also expose APIs because the core of our offering, while our integrations are awesome, the best that exist, our intelligence lies in the server, in our conversational B2B translation platform. So we expose APIs that allow companies to hit that engine from anywhere.
What other industries could this technology expand into? Because there's customer service, right? And that makes total sense. There's software-based customer service. There's going to be, I'm assuming it's going to spread everywhere because, let's say air travel would be a great one to have my service agent be able to chat to me and understand everything I say without going through ridiculous cues. What other places could this go?
Well, really anywhere that a company needs real-time translation services. It might be your user reviews on your website. It might be internal communications. Maybe, you're a global company and your employees are all over the place and you want them to be able to Slack with each other in any language. You could plug into our APIs there. But one tangential market where we're really focused today would be the conversational AI market, which is a little bit different. But nowadays, everybody kicks off their support session with a chat bot. So there's definitely overlap between the multilingual customer support space and the conversational AI space. However, conversational AI is much bigger than just customer support. So we're already launching integrations, say, into Salesforce Einstein Bot. So you can spin up a chat bot in just one language, and then boom, our app makes your chatbot multilingual, just like we make your support team multilingual. And now that we're kind of engaging on that end of the conversational AI market, we're thinking, well, there's lots of opportunity in just the digital assistant space outside of customer support, because we've done lots of research here. And what we've discovered in our research is that everybody underestimates how difficult it is to spin up an AI-based chatbot. You have to define all of this intent data. Let's say you have, 1,000 ways, 1,000 different types of questions that a customer might ask, right? For each type, let's call that an intent, you have to define hundreds of utterances. How many ways might they ask that question? Now, once you've done all of this work in English or just your base language, you're faced with the daunting task of replicating that work in every language that your company needs to support. And research shows they're just giving up the effort because it's so much work. So we're there, right? Ready to say, you only have to do that in one language. And boom, our technology is ready to make your conversational AI solution multilingual. So we're making AIs, robots multilingual, just like we can make humans multilingual in a nutshell.
Listen, I can't wait because this is a topic that's come up with a couple different guests who represent different customer service technologies or chat AI technologies. There's a lot of different things. And I always use this use case, which I'll still say to this day. And until a company can solve it, and I hope yours is the one because I can't wait. But I'll give you an example is in accounting. So we use QuickBooks and the word refund. So I was like, okay, I want to issue a refund. And the knowledge base kept thinking I wanted a refund. It's like, I don't want a refund. I want to issue a refund. And it wasn't that I didn't know how to. I didn't know all the steps because I had issued a refund in QuickBooks, but the person didn't actually get their money. And I was like, this is what I want to figure out. But I guess like you just said, that word overlaps too many things. It couldn't figure out the intent. And I was trying to type it, explain it. The chatbots kept coming up with the recommendation would be like, oh, you want a refund. It's like, I don't want a refund. I want to give a person their money back.
That's just one language. One language and we can't get it right. So once a company gets it right in one language, they're just like, oh my gosh, that was so much work. I am never doing this in 20 languages. And so they don't try. And so, we're there. We're ready.
Yeah. It didn't get resolved until I got a person on the phone. They're like, oh, you want to give a refund? Like, yes.
That must have been so frustrating. I feel your pain.
It was. I mean, but that use case, that happens probably more, like you suggested, probably more often we think, where all it takes is for like you said, a knowledge base is, most knowledge bases are based on frequency and likelihood that it's the accurate representation. So
Yeah.
it can't quite understand what you're trying to say. It's basically going off keywords and saying, hey, in this search, I established this as the most commonly addressed problem, which, like you said, 9 out of 10 times it's going to be right. But that's that 1/10 of a case that causes all the frustration and pain. You mentioned something about conversational AI, and I think it's coming this way, but I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you see a place where like it's just in every service? So like this microphone company, if I have a problem, I would use its chatbot, but I wouldn't use its chatbot to type. I could just like say like, hey, update my firmware.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I mentioned this microphone company, which is sure it's a big company, but even their knowledge base, they're not a big enough company to invest enough tech as of today to do that. And there's a lot of examples of this, maybe this mouse company, or maybe this, I don't know why I would want to get chat support by my pen, but I might want to want a refund. I don't know.
Yeah.
But all these different places, do you see that as where the consumer marketplace is going for help and service?
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt whatsoever. I mean, even today, something like, I'm not going to get this statistic exactly right, but close to 50% of consumers prefer to interact with a chat bot, with a robot, right? Maybe because it's less stressful to just interact with a bot as opposed to a human. So A, people prefer it. B, it saves the company a lot of money when they don't have to hire humans to staff up every support request, right? So it's absolutely the future. And even for smaller companies, it's within reach, especially if they go with more of a rules-based chatbot that's not AI powered, because you can spin up a rules-based bot very quickly to at least field the low-hanging fruit, the easy to answer questions. And then as you get more sophisticated, as your company grows, you have the resources to turn that chatbot into a true AI-based chatbot. It's more expensive, it requires all that intent data. But yeah, there's no doubt whatsoever that that's where the industry is headed. There are so many conversational AI platforms out there today. And the last thing I wanted to mention there, one that we're partnering with, provides a solution to big companies that allows them to basically never put a human in front of a consumer. Now, there are still scenarios, even through this technology that I'm talking about, where you do need to pull in a human, but they're pulled in on the back end of the bot system. So the human is helping the bot and kind of guiding it, kind of adjusting its path when it's not doing the right thing. But the bot is still interfacing with the customer, not this human who's behind the scenes helping the bot out. So that's pretty interesting too.
Further supporting what I tell my kids is, they ask me, well, what kind of jobs will be in the future? It's like, you got to be able to fix robots, whether
Fix
it's
robots.
digital robots or physical robots. If you can fix robots, you're going to be okay.
You're going to be okay forever.
Until the robots can fix themselves, then that's
Right.
a
Well,
problem.
there's that. Yes.
But what you just described is exactly what I think most of us consumers can feel, which is, of course, the bigger companies we mentioned before, airlines, rental cars, huge companies, big software companies, they often have better support systems because it is expensive, right? And the one thing that technology teaches us over time all the time is this is going to get less expensive, better AI models, more frictionless pathways. You already mentioned I think it's brilliant, right? You close the gap of saying, I don't have enough data to say, I know what people are saying, to be like, I'll just go into someone else's translation dictionaries and you leverage those and figure out the best ones. I think those steps are going to make it incrementally more cost effective. And hopefully we get to a point where this service capability goes to every business, because I'd love that. I mean, even like getting a table at a local restaurant can be a pain in the butt. I mean, just think about it. Like you call, I know all of us have felt it. Like the phone line's busy. Why can't they take a reservation online?
Seriously?
Because they can't afford a digital system like that. For yourself, the company you started, you embraced remote work right from the gate. So Language IO is based in Wyoming. I got to ask, do you have other engineers in Wyoming, or no? Everyone is somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do. In fact, we have a really close partnership with the University of Wyoming Computer Science Department, and where I'm on the advisory board, and we get great engineers out of Wyoming. And in the early days of Language IO, we recognized we weren't going to get all of our talent in Wyoming. That's just an impossibility. But we would get as much of our engineering talent here as we could. And we still do have our HQ here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And in the early days, we all did go into the HQ, the engineers who were nearby. But since the early days, we've also had folks all over the world, and we just recognize this is the future. Don't fight it, you know. We've got one of
Yeah.
our best, most senior engineers in Beijing. He is a critical part of our engineering team, and it's never been an issue for us. And even when COVID restrictions loosened up, we got our heads together and we're like, should we all go back into the office, those of us here in Wyoming? We're like, no, no, why would we? When we save so many hours in the day, not having to get into the car, drive to the parking garage, park, walk to the office. Like, it's so much more efficient to just work from home. So why would we force everybody to go back?
Yeah, and now I got to ask, I'm assuming the answer is yes, that you eat your own dog food, meaning like you don't require your Beijing engineer to speak English. He's just typing in Chinese and it's translating for you guys all the time. Are you guys communicating through your own tool for all the software solutions?
So that is a great question. We got lucky. The Beijing engineer speaks great English. So
Okay.
it's not a problem we had to solve with Robert. Hi, Robert. But we do eat our own dog food in the sense that we do have our apps plugged into our CRM, ready to chat and provide email support, translate all of our knowledge base using our own solution. So we do have that going for us.
There you go. Well, Heather, it was awesome having you on the show. Thanks for explaining what you see the future of service at. And, you know, I think it was brilliant what your decision at the very beginning was like, hey, how do I get access to as much data as possible? I think for a lot of, we always say our audience is split into two real types, right? Like there's going to be tech leaders and then emerging tech builders. And sometimes the answer to a really challenging question is like creating a great solution that bridges two solutions together, which is I think what you've done really well. And it was fun hearing about it. And like I said, I hope you continue to succeed because I want my life easier. I need this technology everywhere. And, we wish you the best. And thanks for sharing your story.
Thanks, Albert. It was super nice meeting you. Thanks for having me.